an attorney in California and Florida, based here in Florida. I'm also a federal attorney, and I'm a magistrate for real estate matters with the city. And the things that Kristin and I are going to discuss is if people can be evicted right now because there's a lot of misinformation. Does force majeure apply to help cancel leases, real estate contracts? And what other options you have if you do have to go forward? What are some options? And Michael Huckins will talk about this too, for lending loans, and other things you can do in this situation.
So just let's give them a little in case they don't get to see it. We'll definitely post it for you guys. If you're not following my podcast, it's the Stamp of Approval. It's on Spotify or whatever, so you can get all this information. iTunes, it'll be on YouTube TV. So we're at StampTV, Kristin Stampini at YouTube. So any of these places you can watch all of these wonderful things that I'm going to have with multiple attorneys and multiple doctors and therapists and like I said, lender and CPA and all sorts of people. But tell us a little bit real quick about tenants. So what is a tenant? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, that's great. So you had the president on the news a couple weeks ago, and he's constantly saying to the world, there's not going to be any evictions. There's not going to be any evictions. Well, that's not exactly accurate because each county, each municipality has their own rules. The governors set their own rules, and each court is applying them differently. So where we are, how this has been applied is the sheriffs have been put on a hold. So say you have an eviction from March, say you didn't pay March rent, and it has nothing to do with the pandemic. Your eviction's on hold by the sheriff, but as soon as that hold's lifted, you're going to be evicted. So I don't want people to be blindsided thinking these things can't happen. I could file an eviction today with the court. The court e-filing is open, but the process will take longer just because things are on hold. So we don't know what day that lift will happen. So what my goal is, I hope anyone who doesn't pay rent is going to be prepared, and there's a lot of things you can do. I recommend you do pay rent. But if you cannot, then I recommend reaching out to landlords, because a lot of landlords, what they're doing is you can enter an agreement, something just in writing, to defer it, maybe even waive it. You have options. You can apply a security deposit, work out a deal, apply last month's rent. But the best thing is to work something out with the landlord. Don't be blindsided with an eviction. And landlords, same thing. If you're a landlord, you don't want to be blindsided with all your tenants not paying you. You going to, a problem. So we're going to talk about that too, what options you have. They're both tenants and landlords are actually paying for insurance. Check with your agent. Do you have all risk insurance? Do you have business interruption insurance? Does it apply here? If you have a commercial, go ahead.
When are we doing our podcast?
We're going to do this Monday, I think 11 o'clock. Is that right?
Right.
Monday, 11 o'clock. So come in, I'll list a lot of options. Both landlords, tenants have, purchasers and buyers have, and this time that's actual legal.
Well, the thing is I just think, the people that I'm bringing onto the podcast, guys, I've known for many years, all these attorneys and doctors and everybody else, okay, and whatever they are in the profession. But I'm just going to tell you that there's a lot of misinformation out there, right, Hillary?
That's the problem. There's misinformation, and you want to know what information applies to you in your city, in your town, and with your contract, because a lot of times your contract actually prevails over what might be happening. You're still under contract, so that's important to know.
And let me ask you one more question, and then I'm going to make you guys all watch the podcast. But how about people in that own small businesses and that are renting from you know what I'm talking about?
Small businesses. So small businesses, and that has really been most of the questions I'm receiving. If you're a small business, regardless if you're an essential or non-essential business, put that aside, because you might be partially open, maybe you're doing takeout, maybe you've been forced to close by the government. Irregardless, first thing, you go to your commercial lease and you look at the force majeure provision. Unfortunately, every commercial lease has a different force majeure provision. Yours might apply to this the way it's written. It may not. It may say right there, you're not in default if you don't pay rent. It might say you defer rent. It's going to tell you what to do. The second thing is the loans, and Michael Huckins will talk about this too. Amazing loans out there for small businesses to take advantage. If the lease requires you to pay rent, that's why the government's stepping in. The payroll protection plan, it's supposed to get you over these 3 months. The SBA loans for small business. Florida did a Florida disaster loan, which was issued a couple months ago. It's limited, but you go to floridadisasterloan.org and you check that out. Mayor Scott Singer mentioned that. So there's options. So you look at your force majeure provision, you look at loans, you call your insurance agent, you ask, do I have any coverage here? And then you reach out to either your landlord or opposite to your tenant, and you try to get an agreement in place. So you take that stress off of you. I mean, Kristin brought up a great point. Bringing in doctors and therapists is huge because people can't sleep. So how do you remove some of that stress? Also, get in contact with the other party and try to work it out, because then you control the terms.
Yeah. Like this afternoon, I have one of the best therapists in Florida here, and she's on the news all the time. She's a doctor. And she's going to talk about the anxiety and the different things that people are going through and stuff like that. And all of this, and the reason why I'm talking about it with Hillary right now, is you guys need to talk to your potential clients about it, to your current clients about it. You have to educate, because like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and you need to be the mayor of your city, of your county, of your area. You need to be the one that people feel comfortable coming to me, because they know that they might not want to hear what I have to say sometimes, but they know I'm going to tell it like it is, right? So you got to have people that are trusting. And that's one thing Hillary has worked with so many of my clients on both sides. So on the tenant side and on the landlord side. And she has just, a wealth of information that I can't wait to share with everybody. Thank you, Hillary.
No, thank you for what you're doing. I mean, you're amazing. You're assisting all of us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so let's get back.
Can we ask a question?
Yep, sure, Vic.
Yeah, hi, Hillary, how are you?
Hi, Vic, how are you?
Hey, Vic is in California.
Hi. My question is for tenants. If you have a tenant who historically pay rent very late, and with this time they taking advantage, and now they tell you they're going to pay portion on May 5th and the other portion May 25th. Would you agree with it, or what should you do? Because it's historically like they always late,
Right.
But they used to pay at the 5th or 6th. Yeah.
So what I would do, I think you're in a unique opportunity here to help yourself. If you know you already have a historically delinquent tenant, and now you've got this situation, it looks predictable, they're going to go in default. So what I would is enter into an amendment to the lease that says, look, I'll work with you on a deferment or payment plan, but if you don't pay by this date, you're in default. And make it clear in the contract. California law is a little different than Florida, and it's definitely more tenant friendly. So I think you take this opportunity to work out a payment plan that's acceptable to you, or a deferment, but get it in writing and with strict understanding that it's a default under the contract if the terms are not met.
Yeah, I understand. But let's say May 26th, 25th they pay, but the other rent due is June 1st. How are they going to be able to?
They have to pay. That's the obligation, right? So unless you have a different agreement, some people are taking these couple months and doing some kind of deferment or payment plan. Some people are not.
Some people, I talked to an agent, he's sending 25 3-day notice to evict with the coronavirus inside the addendum. He's just telling them, hey, I never heard about the coronavirus issue, and this is your 3-day notice, And the tenant never told the landlord about the coronavirus or something.
Right. Well, I'll apply to Florida law for a second, but I'm going to mention this with Kristin's. I don't want to take too much time from her today, but I anticipate in Florida, the 3-day notice is not supposed to be applicable during court closures during holidays. So the question is, if you post one now, is it really a 3-day notice? Is it valid, or can the whole eviction be dismissed for a faulty 3-day notice until the court reopens regularly scheduled time? So I think there's going to be some defenses to evictions if you do an improper notice right now. It's not clear. There's no law on it yet.